This weekend saw a number of rare displays of bipartisanship in the spirit of honoring Senator McCain. But on Tuesday, it's back to business for his former colleagues as Supreme Court confirmation hearings for Brett Kavanaugh begin. He's the president's pick to replace Justice Anthony Kennedy. The hearings were a major focus on the Sunday talk shows.
Brett Kavanaugh, an extraordinary judge, a long record, 12 years on the D.C. Circuit Court bench, over 300 decisions. I mean, the Democrats have more than enough information to understand that this is a highly qualified jurist that should be the next Supreme Court justice. And in an earlier time, 30 years ago, he would have passed unanimously. Does he have the votes to win confirmation of the court?
If he does well at the hearing, he will get, my belief is 55 or higher if he does well, and I'm sure he will do well.
When you say 55, you've got to have 51 Republicans with the appointment of McCain's replacement. So you're saying as many as 4 Democrats?
Well, that's 55.
What matters is what happens in the next week at this hearing, and I think you're going to see some really strong sets of questions from a number of us that are on the Judiciary Committee. The point I'm going to make is that this is not normal. You have a nominee with excellent credentials, with his family behind him. You have the cameras there. You have the senators questioning. But this isn't normal. It's not normal because we are not able to see 100,000 documents.
NPR congressional reporter Kelsey Snell is in Washington, and she joins us now. Kelsey, as Senator Klobuchar mentioned, the Trump administration is withholding more than 100,000 pages of Brett Kavanaugh's records from his time at the Bush White House. They are citing presidential privilege. How unprecedented is that, and is it likely to have an impact on his chances of being confirmed?
Democrats say it is unprecedented. Republicans say that they have delivered more documents on this nominee than any other nominee in the past. And, it's hard to gauge how much of an impact this will have because they've been having an argument about documents since Kavanaugh was nominated. And Democrats have so far had a really hard time getting any traction with Republicans about this argument. They have been aghast for some time, saying that they need the fullness of Kavanaugh's record in order to make a fully conscientious decision about this nominee. Republicans say they have more than enough available to them, and I don't see it moving much in either direction. Both camps are pretty much dug in, and these confirmation hearings are starting on Tuesday, leaving very little time for them to continue negotiating over what information will be released.
Well, let's turn to another topic here. NAFTA talks are set to resume this week after breaking down Friday, but any trade deal would have to be approved by Congress. What kind of fight are you expecting to see over this? And are lawmakers in agreement that there is a real need to make a new trade deal?
Lawmakers in general are fine with the idea of updating NAFTA. I think the biggest concern at this point is that it has to now be finalized in the next 30 days. Those are the rules for getting a trade deal through Congress. Is the president notified his intent to deliver the information on Friday? That set up a 30-day clock, and it will be up to the president to deliver the final text in that time. And most of the people in Congress that I've heard from say that they are worried that they haven't really figured out whether or not Canada will be a part of this. If Canada is not in the final text that's delivered in the next 30 days, it would be difficult, if not impossible, to add them later. So there's a lot of pressure on the White House to deliver a final document and to tell Congress what it is they would even be voting on.
Well, the clock is ticking. All right, let's talk about politics here, domestic politics. The president is going to be in Montana Thursday. He's expected to campaign for Republican Senate candidate Matt Rosendale, who will face off against incumbent Democrat Jon Tester, who holds the seat in a conservative state. How vulnerable is Jon Tester's seat?
He certainly is one of the most vulnerable Democrats who is running for re-election this year. But I was actually out the last time the president went to speak in Montana, and the kind of general conventional wisdom out there is that Tester is viewed as just a different kind of Democrat, and he has pretty decent support out there. He's not probably on my list of the most vulnerable,
right.
if you can break them down in that way. He definitely is facing a serious challenge there, but Tester really has identified himself as a really personal figure in Montana. He's a farmer. He works on his farm every time Congress is not in session, and he's done a pretty strong job of connecting with voters, and he has a much more conservative record than most of the other Democrats in the Senate. So he is definitely fighting for his political life, but he seems to be in slightly less danger than, say, his neighbor in North Dakota, Heidi Heitkamp.
Right. Yeah, no, it's interesting because we've talked to local reporters who've essentially echoed what you just pointed out. They say John Tester's really crisscrossed that state to make sure that he personally is out and about and sort of ignoring essentially what it is the president is saying. Nevertheless, as we've seen the president spend more time on the campaign trail, it's been fascinating to watch his messaging. What has that been ahead of the midterms?
Well, he still is talking about 2016 a lot. He still talks about that election and brings up a lot of the same themes that we've seen in stump speeches since his campaign for president. Now, a lot of the focus is also on trying to tie Democrats, no matter what their voting record is, or whether or not they're more conservative, tying them to their leaders in their party. So tying them to Chuck Schumer, tying them to Nancy Pelosi, and tying them to Maxine Waters, the congresswoman from California, who kind of came to prominence even again more recently after she clashed with Republicans and has kind of seen her profile elevated to something of a hero in the Progressive Party. So it's very interesting to watch him do that. I think that it is very effective with his base. The question that we always have, though, is how effective is it with moderates and Republicans who might not necessarily be totally comfortable with Trump on style or on some of his policies. In Montana, particularly, it's going to be interesting to see how Republicans feel about trade, where these agricultural states are getting hit really hard by the trade war with China and who worry about their access to markets in Canada through NAFTA.
Yeah. Another name sometimes we hear the president say on the campaign trail, although I feel like it's been a while, is Massachusetts Senator Elizabeth Warren. On Sunday, Senator Warren released her personnel files from her time at Harvard, and the Boston Globe reviewed those documents and found, quote, clear evidence in documents and interviews that her claim to Native American ethnicity was never considered by the Harvard law faculty, which voted resoundingly to hire her, or by those who hired her to 4 prior positions at other law schools. Now, this comes after repeated insults by President Trump around this issue of her background. Should we take that as a sign, though, that Senator Warren is planning a little bit more in earnest now a presidential bid in 2020?
I think one could infer some of that there. I think that her office would probably say that no decisions have been made yet. But this is the kind of thing that a candidate would need to do to kind of get out in front of or kind of predict what a line of attack would be. Senator Warren has said throughout, since this became kind of an issue in the public, that she hasn't used her Native American background as a reason that she got hired or has not used it to advance her political career in any way. This is just furthering that point, and she furnished hundreds of documents, it sounds like, to the Boston Globe for them to review. And yeah, this just came out today, and her office hasn't said much, but yes, I think you could maybe make your own inferences there.
I, for one, am just trying to get through the midterms. All right, Kelsey Snell in Washington.
Same.
Kelsey, thanks so much.
You bet.